Welcome back. Well, the Maritime provinces are mired in deficit and debt. All face cuts and reductions. To discuss the issue, we've turned to someone who has long lectured, studied, and written about the issue. Donald Savoie is Canadian Chair in Public Administration and Governance at the Universite de Moncton, and he joins us from Moncton this evening. It is certainly nice to see you, sir.
Great to see you, Todd.
Are these deficits spending, revenue problems, or both?
They're mostly spending. There's mostly economic growth. The one consolation that we have in the region that we're not alone. Alberta, British Columbia have a $13 billion deficit. The U.S. have a $40 trillion debt. Europe is mired in oodles of deficits. And I think the one, we can take some consolation, but there's a problem as well because we depend on federal transfer payments far more than the other region. We get 35% of our revenues in terms of federal transfers. Alberta and British Columbia, they're about 15%. So we need to deal with the issue head on. We can't keep kicking the can down the road.
Can New Brunswick and Nova Scotia deal with the financial shortcomings by cuts alone?
No, no, because look, Premier Tim Houston says, I didn't run for office to cut services. And I think he was speaking for a lot of politicians. Politicians don't run for office to cut spending, to cut programs. They run to office to get things done. And so cutting spending, it's easier to sit and say, look, let's cut spending. But actually doing it is very difficult because the provincial governments, unlike the federal government, is mostly salaries. It's mostly delivering services. So when you cut into a lot of programs that a lot of people sort of rely on. So we need to look at spending for sure, but we also need to look at ways to grow the economy. I think that's the avenue that we haven't focused nearly enough. So let's look at natural resources. That's what we have. And we seem to be avoiding tough decisions, whether it's looking at the natural gas, uranium. We even have a problem growing wild blueberries in northern New Brunswick. So if we can't grow wild blueberries and process them, what the hell can we do? So we need to ask some tough questions about economic growth, and we haven't done that.
There was expressions of interest put out for companies to come to Nova Scotia and explore for uranium. Nobody took the province up on it. They didn't want to come in. We had a moratorium for 40 years. Do you think that scared them away?
Oh, I think no question. For 40 years, you tell people, please don't come. We don't want you here. And then we say, well, perhaps you can come. No, I think we need to be open for business in a much more vocal way, in a much more transparent way, and in a much more forceful way.
Does it make a difference that the federal government is deep in the hole as well? You mentioned 35% of transfers come from the feds.
Of course. I think looking forward, it's difficult to imagine that federal transfers are going to increase. Very difficult. Because Ottawa is starting to rejig a lot of its spending to put more into defense. Well, it's going to have to cut somewhere. And it's a lot easier for the federal government to cut transfers, as it did in 1997. It did cut many of its programs, but it cut deeply into a lot of federal transfers. So looking forward, I think we can count on having less federal transfer payments, not more. And we need to deal with that.
And there's certainly a growing appetite among other provinces, some of whom you mentioned, BC, Alberta, Saskatchewan, and revealed they're going to table a debt deficit as well. Their appetite to pay money into the transfer payments, as we know very well, is growing smaller by the day.
Yes, and look, Alberta, Saskatchewan is exploring shale gas, uranium. It's taking tough decisions. And so we are accepting transfer payments with both hands, but we're saying no to the kind of development that's fueling growth in Western Canada. It's time that we look at how we can do, at what we can do in terms of natural resources. We've kicked the can down the road too long.
So what, I guess there is no immediate solution, but if all three provinces in the Maritimes are in the same boat financially, would that not require perhaps the three of them to get together and look at ways that they could do perhaps things together that now they do individually as a way to save some money? It's been talked about for years, right?
Been talked about for 60 years, and we were much better at it 50 years ago. Somehow we've lost we've lost our way, and we need to recapture that. I mean, 60 years ago, there was we set up the Maritime Premiers Commission. We did a lot of things. Now we don't seem to be grabbing it. Now, what's happening south of the border is fueling a lot of appetite to do things better. And I think the three maritime provinces are finally looking at it in a much more serious fashion. So is there room for growth? Is there room for doing it better? Absolutely.
Before I let you go, I want to ask you about interprovincial trade. A lot has been made of that. A lot of talk that that was going to be handled in a different way. We saw Rob Ford and Tim Houston today making an agreement about the ability for people in their provinces to buy liquor from, you know, different suppliers in each of those provinces. But is it still a lot of talk, more so than action?
There's a lot of talk, but I'll tell you, we're seeing progress the past several months, and I think it's due to Donald Trump, not due to us willing to do it. We're forced to look at things that we weren't willing to do so several months ago. Yeah. And so, yes, there's some movement. Yes, there's some progress. Let's just keep at it.
Donald Savoie, we certainly appreciate your thoughts on this, and thank you for coming on, sharing them with us tonight.
Thank you for having me, Todd. Appreciate it.
We'll take a break. We'll be back with much more of your local news after this.